So people will join in due course of time. Let's start the class. So yesterday we had a brief discussion about an overview on managerial economics, the subject that we are supposed to be taught. Now today, as I have already told you that by nature the subject of managerial economics is microeconomic by nature, which means that in maximum types of decisions to be taken either at the organization level or at any other individual economic entity level, maximum microeconomic tools are being used. So we need to understand the different microeconomic tools which are of utmost use in the decision making process and which are considered to be an integral part of the subject of managerial economics. In that regard, today we'll start with the foundation of managerial economics, which is your demand and supply analysis. Demand and supply analysis is considered to be the base of all economic theories, and everything is based on this demand and supply analysis. So, without having knowledge on demand as well as supply analysis, no decisions can be taken prudently. For each and every kind of decision, you need to take into consideration the concept of demand and concept of supply. So that's why it is pertinent on our part to have some rough idea or to be familiar with the demand and supply analysis. What this demand and supply analysis is all about, what are the things which are actually being involved in this process. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to share something with you, then we'll go to discuss. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
Okay. Now, the concept of demand and supply, as I have already told to you, is considered to be the foundation of all economic theories. Why? Because it generally helps in taking decisions related to price as well as related to output. Everything pins on the concept of demand as well as on the concept of supply whenever we are supposed to take any decision, particularly from an organization point of view. So we need to understand the concept of demand and the concept of supply at first. Then we'll move on to find out what are the attributes of demand analysis which are of utmost use in the decision making process and what are the attributes of supply analysis which are of utmost use in the decision making process. So what demand is all about? Demand is supposed to be a concept which generally is related to a particular product. A particular product. We cannot generalize the concept of demand. Whenever we are talking about the concept of demand, we basically mean it by the demand for any particular product. So, what the demand for a product is all about? What is demand? When we can say there is a demand for a particular product. Now, we know that as human beings, we all have some needs and requirements. We all have some desires. And it is not possible on our part to fulfill all our desires. We can have many desires, we can have many wishes, but it is not possible to fulfill all our wishes, all our desires, because the fulfillment of the desires basically require certain other things, like it requires sufficient funding, it requires sufficient income, it requires some other resources also. And as we have already pointed out in the last class, that the resources which are at the disposal of any economic entity, whether it is a family or it is an individual or it is a state or it is any government, they are limited by nature. The resources are limited by nature. So the resources are generally required to fulfill the desires. Because the resources are limited, therefore all the desires cannot be fulfilled. So what we desire, we just cannot go on to fulfill all of them. Therefore, we need to make choices. Out of the different desires that we have, we need to make choices in the sense that we need to choose which particular desire is relevant for us, is supposed to be fulfilled at highest priority. So we need to prioritize them. We need to have a choice among all the desires to find out which choice is the best one, which can ultimately fulfill our requirements. Therefore, when we discuss about the concept of demand, it involves three things. The first and foremost thing, as I told to you, is the desire. You must have to have some sort of desire for that particular product. So whenever we try to find out or identify the demand for a product, you need to first of all identify what is the desire for that product. So there has to be the presence of the desire. Without desire, there cannot be any demand. Secondly, you need to also identify that the desire must have to be backed by willingness. There has to be sufficient willingness on the part of the consumer, whoever desires to have that product, that yes, I will definitely have this product. That willingness must have to be present. Third, simple desire or desire combined with willingness cannot fulfill our requirement, cannot fulfill our need. For fulfillment of our need, along with desire as well as with the willingness, you need to be backed with certain cost or certain funds. So you must have that ability to pay for the product. So three things are there. One is your desire, one is your willingness, one is your ability to pay. When these three things combine together, it creates the demand for the product. So the demand for any product is nothing but the desire for the product backed by willingness and ability to pay for that. Suppose we are moving on the street, we come across a five-story building or 10-story building, and immediately uh, an imagination pops up in our mind that maybe I have a 10-story building with me. But it is not possible to have that. So that doesn't create the demand for a 10-story building. Because even if you desire to have a 10-story building of your own, you do not have that much of willingness either. Or if you have the willingness, you do not have the capacity to pay for that. That's why it cannot create the demand for 10-story building. So for whatever thing you demand, you need to ensure that you have the desire for that product, you have the willingness for that product, and also you have the ability to pay for that product. That ultimately will create the demand for a particular product. So as a business concern, when we try to identify the needs and requirements of the consumers, we first of all need to find out or need to ensure that whether the consumer is having a demand for my product or not. And for that, you need to identify whether that consumer is having the desire to have your product, as well as the willingness to have your product, as well as the ability to pay for your product. Then only you can consider that particular person, that particular individual as a consumer for your product. Clear? So these three things are needed to be present together, combined together to form the demand for a particular product. So generally, the demand concept is always considered to be time specific. You cannot set the demand for a particular product over a period of 10 years. You cannot say it. Or over a period of over an indefinite period. There has to be a specific time period for which the demand for a particular product can be analyzed. So whenever you go for analyzing the demand for a product, you need to ensure that for what time period you are going to analyze the demand for the product. So it is always time specific. That's why we can say that the demand for a product is nothing but the effective desire for a product over a particular period of time. Here by effective desire, I means desire plus willingness to buy plus ability to pay. Now, when we're discussing about the demand for a product and we understand the concept of demand for a particular product, we need to know what are the factors which ultimately affect the demand for a particular product, which can have an influence over the demand for a product. So for that, we need to go through the determinants of product or the determinants of demand for a particular product. Because these determinants or these factors actually determine the demand for a particular product. These are the factors which as a business concern, which as a decision maker, you also need to take into consideration while doing the demand analysis for your product with which you are dealing with. So it is important on the part of the decision makers, it is important on the part of the business concerns that they need to understand what are the different factors which have some sort of influence over the demand for a particular product. And for that, they need to understand the different determinants of demand. When talking about the determinants of demand, we can identify, we can categorize different factors which are having some sort of impact, some sort of influence over the demand for a particular product. The first and foremost factor or the determinant which determines the demand for a particular product is nothing but the price of that product itself. Whenever you are trying to purchase anything, the first and foremost thing that strikes your mind is the price of that product. Because by knowing the price, you can decide whether you can go for purchasing it or not, whether the price is affordable on your part or not. Then only you can ensure, yes, I have the ability to pay for it, or I do not have the ability to pay for it, so I must forego it. If you have the ability to pay for it, you can go for it. So price of the product is considered to be the major determinant of demand. Therefore, the decision makers must have to consider the price of the product as one of the major determinants of the demand for their product. That is the reason why the pricing decisions are always considered to be integral in the business activities. Because whatever price you will fix for your product, you need to ensure that it is going to be affordable on the part of the consumers that you have identified for your product. So price of the product is one of the major determinants. So simple price of the product is not the only factor which affects the demand for a particular product, because even if the price is affordable, still then some people hesitate to purchase that product. That's why, apart from price of the product, there are certain other factors which also influence the demand for a particular product. The second factor is your income of the consumers. So whoever you have targeted as your consumers, you need to uh, know the pocket size of the consumers, because it is the pocket size of the consumers which ultimately decide whether to go for a product or not. Here by income, we generally mean the real income, not the monetary income. Monetary income is basically considered to be the income that you have earned. But real income is the income which is considered to be the value of your monetary income. Suppose you are earning 10,000 rupees a month, but what that 10,000 rupees will buy from the market, that constitute the real income of yours. So your real income is not 10,000 rupees. Therefore, real income always decides whether to demand for a product or not. And real income is basically related to price. Price and real income are generally inversely related. If price is more in the market, then automatically the real income will be less. You can understand the fact that over a period of time or over the period of time, the value of money actually goes down. What 1000 rupees was fetching 5 years back, now the same 1000 rupees is not fetching the same thing. It is fetching less nowadays because the value of money has gone down. Therefore, your real income goes down because of increment in prices. Similarly, if prices goes down, your real income will go up. So the more the real income you have, the more the possibility that you will demand for products or your demand will be more. The less the real income you have, the less the demand you will have. And because price is considered to be inversely related to the income, real income, that's why whenever price increases, it leads to a fall in the real income, which ultimately leads to a fall in the demand. From this, we can have an inverse relationship between price and quantity demand for a product, which ultimately is being explained through a law, which we generally call as the law of demand. Keeping all other things remaining constant. That means by taking only price as a determinant of the demand for a particular product, uh, we can say that there exists an inverse relationship between price and quantity demand for a product. The more the price, the less the demand for a particular product, and the less the price, the more the demand for a product. But here we need to take into consideration an assumption that all other things apart from the price of the product remain constant, which is not a realistic thing because income might not be constant, taste and preferences might not be constant over a period of time. But the law of demand itself suggests that the inverse relationship exists between price and quantity demand for a product, where we take into assumption that all other things remaining constant. So consumers' income is another determinant. That means it all depends upon the real income of the consumer, that whether a product is going to be demanded in the market or not. Apart from consumers' income, another factor which also determines the demand for your product or for any product is the prices of related products. We discussed about related products. I told you about the related products in the last class that by related products we mean either the substitute products or the complementary products. And as you know, in this modern day world, almost all products are having their substitutes being available in the market. So any change in the prices of the substitutes might lead to a change in the demand for the other product. We do not have any control over that. So even if the price is affordable, or even if you have the sufficient real income to pay for it, still then you are not purchasing it because you find the substitutes more cheaper, you find the substitutes more lucrative as compared to this. That's why you cannot demand for it, even if the price is affordable on your part, or even if you have the income with you. So prices of the substitutes or the complementary products also determines the demand for a particular product. The another factor which also determines the demand for your product is your consumer taste and preferences. You know that it all pins down on the preferences of the consumer, and the taste and preferences of the consumer goes on changing over time. So with the passage of time, the taste and preferences of the consumer goes on changing. It doesn't remain the same. So whatever preferences you had 5 years back, your preferences might have changed. Suppose you are addicted to one particular brand of garment 5 years back, but in these 5 years, new variety have come out, new brands have come out, and you have switched over your preferences from the old brand to the new brand. So it is because of the change in your preference as a consumer that you are not demanding the old product. Even if the old product is affordable in your part, even if you have the capacity to pay for it, even if the substitute products are not that much lucrative, still then you are not demanding for the product because your preference have changed. So with the passage of time, the preferences goes on changing. That's why the demand for product also goes on changing with the change in taste and preferences. You can find that in the 70s or 80s, there was a huge demand for bell pants. But nowadays, bell pants are not being available. In the early 2000s, there was a huge demand for jeans. But nowadays, the preference might have changed. Those who have a demand for any particular cosmetic products, suppose 5 years or 10 years back, but nowadays many companies have come out, so their demand might have changed because the preferences might have changed. So taste and preferences of the consumer also plays an important role in determining the demand for a particular product. And another factor is your expectations regarding the future prices. So with the change in the market conditions or with the change in the government budgets, suppose you expect that the price of a certain product is going to be increased in future. So you can go on to purchase the same product in huge quantity at present because you know that if 2 months hence or 3 months hence you will go on to purchase it, you will have to pay more. So why to pay more? Let's purchase it in bulk today. So then I can use it over a period of 6 months or over a period of 1 year. So therefore, if as a consumer you expect that the future price of a particular product is going to be increased, you can increase the demand for that product at its present price. And if you expect that the future price is supposed to be go down or supposed to go down, then you can reduce the demand for the product at present because you know that in future the prices are supposed to go down, supposed to be lower. So whenever the prices will be lower, I'll purchase that. Why to purchase now? So these are some of the factors which actually determine the demand for a particular product. So from this we can identify that demand for any particular product is not affected by a single factor. Therefore, demand analysis as a whole is considered to be a multi-factor analysis or multivariable analysis. It is not a single variable analysis. It is not a univariable analysis. Rather, it is a multivariable analysis, multi-factor analysis. So, suppose I have taken the example here. We faced the severe situation of COVID-19 during the 2020s, 2021. Suppose during that time period, the demand for hand sanitizers and face masks increased rapidly. Why? Because of the health concerns. Therefore, the demand for the sanitizers, hand sanitizers, as well as face masks took an upward shape, demand curve took an upward shape during that time period. So since everybody was purchasing that and it was necessary for all of us to purchase these things related to our because we have our own health concerns, that's why the demand automatically increased. So there was no effect of any price change or any income change or any taste change or any preference change. Rather, it is the market conditions which forced us to purchase more and more hand sanitizers and face masks. That's why the demand for these products increased rapidly during that time period. This is all about the basic concept of demand. Now, coming to the basic concept of supply, it is just the opposite of demand. In demand analysis, we generally try to study the behavior of the consumers. In supply analysis, we generally try to understand the behavior of the producers, what the producer actually want. So, supply analysis indicates that uh, as a producer, what amount of the product you want to sell in the market. You can produce more quantity of products because it might cost you less, but you cannot sell all of them at a time in the market. So if you, what is your intention to sell your product? So generally, the concept of supply refers to the quantity of a particular good or of a particular service that as a producer you are willing to offer as well as able to offer for sale at different prices over a specific time period. Because as a producer, you always want to maximize your profit. So if it costs you less to produce more, you can go for that. But by selling that at a lower price, you cannot compromise on your profit. You can hold them, you can uh, stock them, and from time to time basis, you can release them in the market so that Whenever the price will go on increasing, you can sell it at a higher price. Because you have produced it at a lower price, so now selling it at a higher price, so you will generate more profit out of it. So supply analysis is generally considered to identify the behavior of the producers. What quantity of the products produced by the producer is willing as well as able to offer for sale in the market over a specific time period. It also depends upon many factors, just like the demand for a particular product. The price of the product also is a factor which determines the supply. If the as a producer, if you find that the price of the product is more in the market, you will be intended to sell more and more because at higher prices, if you sell, you will there is every possibility that you will generate more profit. So in demand, we pointed out that if the price is more, consumers want to demand less because the consumer real income will go down. But in supply analysis, we are saying if the price is more, then the as a producer, you will intend to first sell more and more products. Similarly, if the price is less, you will intend to sell less and less because more price will fetch you more profit, less price will fetch you less profit, which is your objective because as a producer, you want to ensure maximization of profit. Apart from that, technology also plays an important role in deciding about the supply. If you are using an outdated technology, then automatically your production will be less. If your production will be less, then automatically your supply will be less because supply depends upon the total production. So depending upon the technology, since production largely depends on technology, therefore supply also depends on technology. So use of modern and updated technology results in more output, which ultimately will lead to more supply. But use of outdated technologies will result in less output, less production, which again leads to less supply in the market. Then input costs. Input means what means you are using in the production process. What are the factors? What are the resources you are using in the production process? Those are considered to be inputs. The inputs might be in the form of labor input or in the form of capital input or in any other form which you are using in the production process. So if input cost is more, then automatically the cost of production will be more. If cost of production will be more, then automatically total production will be less. If total production is less, then supply will be less. So depending upon the input costs, supply gets affected. The more the input costs, the less will be the supply. The less the input cost, more will be the supply. Because input cost directly affects the production. More input cost leads to more cost of production, leads to less production, which ultimately results in less supply. And the opposite happens in case of less input costs. Another factor which also affect the supply of any product is your government policies. Here we are not talking about all the policy of the government. Rather, we are focusing specifically on the taxation policy and subsidy policy of the government. As you know, taxation imposed by the government largely affects the business conscience. If more taxes will be imposed, then automatically production will be less. If government imposes more tax on production, government imposes more tax on inventories, government imposes more tax on the uh, revenue, then automatically the production will be less. Similarly, less tax will lead to more production. What about subsidy? Subsidy, you must understand that it is a concept or it is an economic concept which is generally considered to be an offer by the government to the producers. So subsidies generally are being given to the producers. If the government finds that the cost of production is going to be high, so whatever extra cost the business concerns or the producer is going to bear, if the government can compensate that extra cost, then automatically the producer will not have to bear more cost, and accordingly the producer will go on to produce more, which ultimately will lead to more supply, and accordingly more supply might result in satisfaction of more needs and more requirements. So this thing you need to remember that subsidies are only provided by the government to the producers, not to the consumers. Many people think that we are giving a subsidy on bank loan. The farmers are being provided with a subsidy. The farmers are not getting the subsidized amount. It is the bank which is getting the subsidized amount, and it is the government which, on behalf of the farmer, actually providing the subsidy. You can also relate it to your cooking gas connections. In cooking gas, nowadays the subsidies are coming to your account. You might feel that it is directly coming to me, so the government is providing the subsidy to me. No, the government has provided that subsidy to the distribution company, and in turn, the distribution company has given you the subsidy because you have already paid that subsidized amount to the distributor. Now, since the distributor is getting the subsidy from the government, so the distributor is transferring that subsidy amount to you. It is not the government which is directly providing the subsidy to you. So more subsidy will help in produce more production. More production will result in more supply. Less subsidy will result in less production, which ultimately will lead to less supply. That's why the government policy related to taxation and subsidy also affects the supply for a product. So, being a producer, you need to have an eye on the government policy related to taxation and subsidy because that will help you to take an appropriate decision. So these are some of the similarly expectation of future prices. Here the expectation is related to the expectation of the producers. If as a producer you identify or you apprehend that in future the costs of your production is going to be very high because the input costs are supposed to be high, then you can produce more at present and less in future. So accordingly, at present your supply will be more. Even if it is not required, you will go on to supply more and more because you anticipate that the input costs are going to be very high in the future. So if you take a contemporary example here, we all are aware about the EVs. Nowadays, EVs are considered to be one of the trending things. It is related to the electric vehicles. So supply of electric vehicles is increasing as government incentives and technological advancements reduce production cost. So one question arises in your mind why there is a huge surge in demand for EVs nowadays. People are not trying to have the petrol efficient or diesel efficient vehicles. Rather, they want to have more electric vehicles because from the consumer point of view, it is supposed to the maintenance of these electric vehicles are supposed to be less. So even if at the time of purchasing we'll have to pay some more amount, but in due course of time, your maintenance cost will be lower because if you charge the battery for 3 hours or 4 hours, it will run minimum 100 kilometers. And for charging the battery, it costs you very less as compared to the price of petrol or price of diesel. So because of that, because of the technological advancements, because of the incentives being given, subsidies being given by the government to the manufacturers of electric vehicles, there has been a promising increase in the supply of electric vehicles in the recent time period. Now, what is the purpose of uh, studying the demand and supply analysis together? The purpose of studying the demand and supply analysis together, either from the point of view of a decision maker or from the point of view of a business concern or from the point of view of a student, You need to ensure that ultimately by using the demand and supply analysis, you will try to reach the equilibrium level. In the market, this equilibrium of price as well as equilibrium of output is highly essential to be attained or to be achieved. So equilibrium is a position where the demand for a particular product as well as the supply for that particular product equates with each other. When they are supposed to be equal, total demand and total supply are equal, the point at which the demand and supply are equal, that point is the equilibrium point. And equilibrium basically indicates that this is the amount of output or this is the total amount of the product which the consumers need to have and which the sellers or the producers need to produce. So it meets the expectations of the consumers as well as the expectations of the producers. So equilibrium doesn't happen if demand exceeds supply either or if supply exceeds demand. If demand suppose is more than the supply, then there is a shortage pushing prices up. If demand is more than supply, that means whatever is demanded in the market, the producers are not being able to supply that much amount of product. That which indicates that there is a shortage in the market, and because of a shortage, it will lead to increment in prices. Because when prices will go up, automatically demand will go down. Once the demand will go down, it becomes equated with supply. Then the equilibrium will arise. Similarly, if supply is more than demand in the market, then there is a surplus. And if there is a surplus situation, it will push the prices down. So more product is available in the market, but people are not interested to purchase all the products. So what will happen to those products which have not been demanded? So by reducing the price of the product, you can create a demand for that product, and accordingly, when the price will go down, demand will increase. So the shortage in demand will go up, and ultimately it will be equated with the supply. Clear? Are you all clear? Okay.
Yes.
Now coming to the next slide. Coming to the next slide, I am showing it to you. Now, considering the equilibrium situation, because as a producer, you need to attain equilibrium, as a consumer, you also need to attain equilibrium. So, whenever as a producer, when you are supposed to take any decision and you are using the demand and supply analysis together, the first and foremost thing you need to attain is the equilibrium. And you need to identify where is the point at which the total demand for the product and total supply of the product will be equated. Now, taking an example of that, we can say that when the iPhone 15 was launched, the demand exceeded supply initially, leading to higher prices and wait times. So people were eagerly waiting for that. And nowadays, as you know, people don't have any shortage of money. So people were eagerly waiting for iPhone 15, uh, which ultimately led to a situation where the demand for iPhone 15 was considered to be more as compared to the supply. So those who were manufacturing the iPhone 15, they did not meet the increased demands. As a result of which, they went on to increase the price of the iPhone 15 and also increase the waiting time period. So today we are putting a you can say that order, but you will get that order after 15 days or after 1 month. So the craze to have an iPhone at present will go down because you will have that iPhone definitely, but it will you will have it after 15 days or after 1 month. So it indicates that since there was a shortage of product or a shortage of iPhone 15 because the demand exceeded the supply, so the prices went up. So this is all about the concept of demand and supply. Now, in the demand analysis itself, there is another component which is of utmost importance, particularly related to the pricing decisions or pricing strategies. That concept is known as your elasticity concept. We do have the concept of elasticity related to demand analysis as well as related to supply analysis. So when we try to discuss in large about the demand and supply analysis, so after knowing or understanding the basic nuances of demand and supply analysis, we need to understand the concept of elasticity also, because it is the concept of elasticity which largely helps the decision makers in pricing decisions, particularly. Therefore, we need to have some sort of idea about elasticity of demand as well as elasticity of supply. Now, as I told to you, there are different determinants of demand. So, depending upon the determinant type of determinant of demand, we can have different types of elasticities. Elasticity, as I told you in the last class, that an object is supposed to be an elastic object if it is easily expandable or if it is easily contractible. So if you can easily expand an object or easily contract an object, then you can say that this object is, a, is an elastic object. Here we are talking about the elasticity of demand. That means if demand can easily be expanded or can easily be contracted. So elasticity of demand basically refers to the easy expansion of demand or easy contraction of demand. That means if you can increase the demand or you can reduce the demand depending upon the situation. If you find that your product is supposed to be demanded more, then by reducing the price of the product, you can create more demand for your product. Or if you find that the demand for your product is very large, but you are not in a position to uh, sell that much amount of output, you can, uh, or if you find that the demand is less, you can reduce the price so that demand will be more. If the demand is more, you can increase the price so that demand will go down. Now, concept of elasticity basically uh, indicates the responsiveness of demand for a particular product to a change in any of the determinants of demand. Any change that occurs in any of the determinants of demand ultimately will lead to a change in demand for that product. Now, in the simple demand analysis, where we went through the law of demand also, we just identified the direction of change in demand for a particular product because of a given change in the price of the product. But we have not identified what would be the magnitude of change in demand for a product when there occurs a given change in the price of the product. And also, since we have identified there are different determinants of demand, there are different factors which can influence the demand for a particular product. So we need to ascertain what would be the intensity of change in the demand for a particular product when there occurs a change in any of the determinants of the product. So generally, the concept of elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of demand for a particular product to a change in any of its determinants. The determinant might either be in the form of price of the product, or in the form of income of the consumers, or in the form of prices of related products, or in the form of advertisement expenditure, whatever it may be. And the concept of elasticity, you must remember this thing, that the concept of elasticity of demand is always considered to be, um, you can say that a relative concept. It's not an absolute concept, it's a relative concept. Do you understand what is relative concept? Relative concept basically means the concept which can be expressed in percentages terms. Why we are saying that the elasticity of demand concept is a relative concept? Because in elasticity of demand, we are taking into consideration two variables. One is an independent variable, one is a dependent variable. Here, the dependent variable is nothing but the demand for a particular product. What about the independent variable? The independent variable might be in any form, might be in the form of price of the product, might be in the form of income of the consumer, might be in the form of prices of related products, might be in the form of advertisement expenditure. So those are considered to be independent variables because on them depend the demand for a particular product. So demand for the particular product is the dependent variable and independent variables are many. So in elastic demand, we are taking into consideration two variables and we try to identify the relationship between these two variables or we try to identify what would be the magnitude of change in the dependent variable because of a given change in the independent variable. Now, why we are considering the concept of elasticity of demand as a relative concept? Because out of these two variables, which we discussed, that is independent variable and dependent variables, the units of measurement of these two variables are different. You can measure price in terms of rupees or in terms of any other currencies, but you cannot measure the demand in terms of rupees or in terms of any other currencies. So the unit of measurement of demand for a particular product and the unit of measurement of price are different. Similarly, the unit of measurement of income of a consumer and the unit of measurement of demand for a product are different. The unit of measurement of prices of related products and the demand for a particular product, they are different. So because of difference in units of measurement of both independent and dependent variables, whenever we try to ascertain the relationship between these two variables, we need to ascertain it in percentages terms. That's why we call the concept of elasticity of demand as a relative concept. It means while trying to analyze the elasticity of demand for a particular product, we generally try to find out what would be the percentage change in the dependent variable, that is the demand for any particular product because of a given percentage change in any of the independent variables, that is either price of the product or prices of related products or income of the consumer or advertisement expenditure. So here we try to examine the percentage change in dependent variable because of a given percentage change in independent variable. This indicates that the concept of illustrative demand is a relative concept. Now, since there are different independent variables, as we have pointed out the fact that it is because there are different determinants of demand. That's why we can have different types of elasticities. And here we'll discuss only three major types of elasticities. One is your price elasticity of demand, one is your income elasticity of demand, one is your cross elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand, we generally take into consideration when we try to ascertain the percentage change in quantity demand for a product because of a given percentage change in the price of that product itself. So if as a producer or if as a manufacturer or as a business concern, you want to make any change in the price of your product, you first of all have to identify what will be the likely percentage change that you want to make in the price of your product. And then you will have to ascertain or calculate or identify what would be the likely percentage change in the demand for your product if you go on to change the price of your product by the given percentage. Depending on that, we can have two things. Either the product is considered to be an elastic product or the product is considered to be an inelastic product. If the degree of responsiveness of change in demand is considered to be more, then it is considered to be an elastic demand product, or the product is supposed to have an elastic demand. But if the degree of responsiveness of change in demand for a particular product is less as compared to the percentage change in the independent variable, then the product is supposed to have inelastic demand. It means, suppose you make a change of 10% in the price of your product. And consequently, you identify that a 10% change in price of your product will result in a 5% change in demand for your product. It means the demand for your product is not responding that much to the change in price of your product, which will indicate that the demand for your product is inelastic. But if you find that because of a 10% change in the price of your product that you want to make, there is every likelihood that the demand for your product will change by more than 10%, may it be 15% or 20% or 30%. Then you can ensure that your product is having an elastic demand, because here the degree of responsiveness of change in demand for your product is supposed to be more as compared to the percentage change in the price of your product that you want to make. So either a product can be price elastic or price inelastic if you are taking into consideration the price of the product as the independent variable. Similarly, if you are taking into consideration the income of the consumer as an independent variable, then you have to find out whether your product is income elastic or income inelastic. If a given percentage change in income of the consumer leads to a more than that percentage change in the demand for a product, then the demand for that product is income elastic. But if a given percentage change in income of the consumer leads to a less than that percentage change in the demand for the product, then the demand for the product is supposed to be income inelastic. So, if the degree of responsiveness of change in the dependent variable, that is the demand for a particular product, is more as compared to the percentage change in the independent variable, then it is supposed to be elastic. And if the degree of responsiveness of change in the dependent variable is less as compared to the percentage change in the independent variable, then it is supposed to have inelastic demand. So ultimately, as a producer, you while trying to analyze the elasticity of demand for your product, you need to pin down on two things. You need to identify whether your product is uh, elastic or inelastic. If it is elastic, then your pricing decision will be different. If it is inelastic, then your pricing decisions will be different. Uh, we have taken some examples here. If you are taking into consideration the utmost necessary products like salt, which you can relate to every household because it is required by every household, and this is a product, salt is a product which is being used in almost everything that is being cooked in a family or in a house. So that salt is supposed to have inelastic demand, where you are taking into consideration the price of salt as the independent variable. Any change in the price of salt is not going to make a drastic change in the demand for salt, because salt is an utmost necessity product. So whatever its price will be, people will definitely go for it. Here we are talking about the class product salt. I am not talking about any specific brand of salt. If you are purchasing a kg of salt at rupees 30, and suppose the price of the salt has increased from rupees 30 to 33, you cannot go on to reduce the demand for salt, because the demand for salt in your family, uh, taking into consideration the number of members in your family, will remain be the same. If you are using 1 kg or maximum 2 kg of salt per month, you will have to use it whatever the price may be. If the price was rupees 30 and you were using 2 kg of salt, now since the price has increased to 33, you will go on to reduce the demand for salt. It is not going to be possible. You will definitely have that 2 kg of salt for 1 month, even if the price has increased to 33 from rupees 30. So in case of utmost necessity products, the products are having some inelastic demand because in case of such products, the demand remains steady regardless of change in price. But if you think of the luxurious products like luxury cars or any luxury cosmetic products, they are supposed to be highly elastic. Any small change in the price of the product will definitely lead to a great change in the demand for the luxury products. So you need to identify under which category your product comes, whether it is a necessary product or it is a luxurious product. Depending on that, you can easily identify whether your product is having elastic demand or inelastic demand. Is it okay with all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
tomorrow there is no class. On Saturday we'll continue with this.
Okay, sir. Can you brief about cross pricing, let's say?
Cross. So the word cross indicates that here you are taking into consideration two products, where you are assuming that both the products are supposed to be related to each other. You do not know in what way they are related. They can either be substitute to each other or they can be complementary to each other. So cross elastic demand indicates that if there occurs any change in the price of a related product, what will happen to the demand for the original product? So if an increase in the price of a substitute product leads to an increase in the demand for another product, it can indicate that both are related in a way where both are considered to be substitutes. Suppose take the case of four-wheelers and the petroleum products. Four-wheelers can, in general, traditionally they run on petrol and diesel. Suppose the prices of four-wheelers increases. Now, because the prices of four-wheelers increases, as per the law of demand, the demand for four-wheelers will ultimately go down. As the price increase, the demand for the product is lowered down or go down. So, because the price of four-wheelers has increased, it results in a fall in the demand for four-wheelers. Now, when there is a fall in the demand for four-wheelers, automatically there will be a fall in the demand for petroleum products because less number of vehicles are being sold. So the requirement to requirement for fuel for these less number of vehicles will be less. So even if there occurs no change in the price of petrol or in the price of diesel, still then the demand for petrol or demand for diesel has calmed down because the demand for four-wheelers has gone down. Clear? So that thing also happens in case of any other product which you think are considered to be substitutes. Because in this modern day world, as I have already pointed out, that there are almost all products are having some substitutes of it. So any change in the prices of substitutes might affect the demand for your product. Even if you do not go on to make any change in the price, still then the demand for your product will go down if the prices of the substitute products will go down. Similarly, there are certain products which are supposed to be complementary to each other. By complementary, mean two products are supposed to be complementary when the use of one product is not possible without the use of the other product. So take the case of nowadays, we are more tech savvy, we are dependent more on computers. Suppose you are using a printer. So without cartridge, printer cannot run. So any increase in the price of cartridge will automatically lead to a fall in demand for printers, even if the price of printers has not gone down. So as a business concern, as a decision maker, you need to take this into consideration. If my product is having some substitutes, what will happen to the demand for my product if the prices of substitutes go on changing? My product is having a complementary product. What happens if the price of the complementary product suppose increases to the demand of my product? You need to analyze all these things before taking a particular or rational decision for your product. Got it?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So tomorrow
Thank
there
you,
is
sir.
no class. Day after tomorrow, we'll discuss about it. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.